Hello, Frankfurt. As a neuroscientist, it's a huge honor to be here in Germany, birthplace of many famous neuroscientists, Hans Berger, Franz Nissl. So my talk today is not going to be covering the history of German neuroscience, although I'd love to do that. It's about the future of German neuroscience. I'm going to begin by just talking about how do we study the brain. It's pretty simple. You dedicate your life. You spend 6.5 to 7 years in your master's lab just to get access to tools at a graduate school to be able to record from the brain, because equipment is very expensive, about $40,000. There's only a few places within a country that you have access to these types of things. And I think that's a shame because there's 1 out of 5 of us. That's 20% of the entire world has a neurological disorder. And how many cures do we have for neurological diseases? Anyone know? 0. We don't have any cures for a neurological disorder. Yet the only way that you can start to learn, study the brain, is to dedicate your life and become a neuroscientist. And so it's not like in other areas of science. For example, in astronomy, you don't need to get a PhD in astrophysics to get access to tools to understand a little bit about how the planets work. And maybe you become interested, become an astrophysicist later in life, or maybe it's just you're actually making discoveries. The Hale-Bopp comet was discovered by an amateur. So by giving access to more people, I think science progresses further. So when I was a graduate student, my labmate, Tim Marzullo, and myself set out to sort of change the way that neuroscience education was being taught. So we're trying to reach back earlier in the process to get more people interested in becoming neuroscientists. And so we would do various things. We had one where it was a paper mache Frankenstein, which was an ice cream brain. We had one student that would scoop out a part of the brain. As scientists, we call it a lesion. So you would cut out a part of the brain, and we would transfer that through a transmodulator to another student. So we had, for example, if you took out the motor cortex, we would pass that lesion over to a student. The motor cortex controls movement, so we would have the one student sort of like tie their hands down. And you can go do the same thing with the visual cortex and the amygdala and all these different areas. And so we were noticing that students were starting to understand a little bit how different parts of the brain do different things, which is important. Far removed from the cool stuff we were doing in the lab, like actually seeing how the brain works and this type of stuff. So around this time, we decided we want to come up with a self-imposed engineering challenge. So we created an abstract for the Society for Neuroscience, the largest neuroscience conference in the world. And we said we're going to try to record a spike for less than $100. And you can stop by our poster and take a look and see if it works. And so when people stop by, this is what they saw. As Tim and I being much younger versions of ourselves, but showing off kind of our inventions, which is like a bunch of wing nuts and balsa wood. But in the end, we had an invention that allowed you to record a spike without much technology, right? So unbeknownst to us, this is a bigger deal than what we thought it would be, and it got picked up by the journal Nature, and all of a sudden we started getting these emails about people wanting to have one of these kits that records the brain at a low cost, fellow scientists, to be able to show others what they're doing. And so we decided to create an organization, we're Backyard Brains, and we started with the prototype we had at the poster. We kind of came up with this kit right here, which is the Spiker box, which allows you to replace about $40,000 worth of research equipment to be able to record from the brain. And so I use a lot of terminology already that maybe you're not familiar with, because I just said we don't teach neuroscience that well. So I'm going to step back for a moment and describe a bit how this brain works. So we have cells in the brain. Anyone know the names of the cells of the brain? Neurons, good. Neurons communicate with each other through a long process. It's something that goes from the center to the outer of the process using electricity. And that electricity comes in a very distinct packet. It's called a spike. And it's through this spike, it's like the euro of the brain, the common currency at which all of our feelings and emotions are coming in, and basically our motor outputs coming out are all passed around in this type of electrical currency. And so what I'm going to do now is record from a living brain, but I'm not going to record from my brain. I'm going to record from the brains of these guys here. Let me open this up. These are South American cockroaches, la cucarachas. So they are Latinos, but they are having brains that are very, very similar to ours. If we take a look at the setup here, we have about 100 billion or about 80 billion neurons in our brain, but the cockroaches have about 1 million. But the individual neuron itself is very similar. If you took a slice of tissue, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it was your brain or a cockroach's brain inside the slice. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put the cockroach into the ice water, and I'm going to anesthetize the cockroach. Okay. So what's going on? Whoa. All right. So I'm going to put the cockroach into the ice water, and we're going to anesthetize the cockroach, and then what's happening right now is that the neurons inside of his body have these little ion channels that open and close, and as things get colder, what happens? It slows down these things. So the ion channels are going to chill out, and we're going to be able to remove one of his legs and be able to record from a neuron inside the leg, all right? So let's just talk about this briefly about the experiment, and we'll get into the ethics of this in a second. All right. So the neurons inside the legs are sending information from the leg all the way to the central nervous system, okay? So there's a little neuron in each hair, and as you touch the hair, it's going to tell the brain of the cockroach that something is touching it. So I'm going to take off one of his legs, but I want to make you feel good. You guys, this is a very green process. If you remove a leg from a cockroach, they're much cooler than us. Their legs can regrow. So this is an experiment that my co-founder did, published in PLOS One this year, that shows that after 43 days, a cockroach leg will regrow on a little nub. And if you wait for the next molt, you can't tell the difference between the left, which was the control leg, and the right that was removed. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to take a cockroach, and I'm going to remove its leg. And the reason why I'm going to remove it is so that we can warm it up and record the neurons that are inside of it. So so we found out that cutting it was actually worse than ripping it off. So cockroaches are designed to be able to rip off their legs in times of trouble. So what we're going to do now, so now the leg is warming up, and I'm going to put a couple of pins into the leg, and we're going to be able to record the electrical activity from those neurons as they communicate with each other. And I'm going to place the pins into the leg right now, and we're going to eavesdrop in on one neuron talking to the brain and telling it information about touch and wind, things that are kind of important to a cockroach that wants to survive another day. All right, so without further ado, let me find my speaker here. I'm going to turn this up. I'm going to turn this on. We're going to listen to, possibly for the first time, what the brain sounds like. Okay, so I'm going to turn this on. Beautiful. Does that sound like anything? Did you guys hear anything? Is it noise? Did it work? So what you're hearing is raindrops, it sounds almost like. So this is actually the spikes of the brain. So what I can do is I can show you. You guys are all neuroscientists here. So we want to make sure that we prove to you that these are real. And you're actually recording the spikes of a cockroach. So I'm gonna do an experiment now. So we can even do it we can just listen. So you're not going to be able to see when I'm touching the leg, but you're going to be able to hear a difference. And that difference is in the messages that are being sent to the brain. So are you ready? So I'm going to have a little cockroach leg toucher. So you hear that noise that's going on. Those are the spikes that are coming from the brain, from the leg of the cockroach. A neuron living in that hair, as I touch it, it's sending information out to the brain, which is now sitting in here, but the neuron's alive. It doesn't know that. It'll stay alive for about 2 to 3 days, which is kind of cool. So just to summarize, information, this is something that a student can do even in the 5th and 6th grade to be able to understand something very important. It took us a long time as neuroscientists to figure this out, that information is encoded by spikes, and the rate of the number of spikes per second is what encodes the information, okay? So you can imagine what kids look like when they actually see this for the very first time. Many people don't know this is like happening inside their body, and so we bring this around the country, and people are just amazed by what's going on here. And so what we do is we come up with a number of experiments. I'm a neuroscientist, and we find out out ways that we can sort of address some particular thing, rate coding or neurochemical reactions, and make them into experiments for people to work on. So now I want to just do one more experiment that's going to do on the output of the brain. So we were looking at the input of the brain, looking at the recording from neurons. Now I'm going to look at the output of the brain. I need some volunteers from the audience. Do I have a volunteer? No, this is Germany. Come on, don't do this to me. All right, you can come down. All right, and then was there someone right here that raised their hand? Yeah, come on down as well. All right, round of applause. What's your name?
Alex.
Alex, you hang out here for a second.
Do I get to keep my leg?
You get to keep your leg. What's your name?
Svenja.
Svenja? All right, Svenja, you come over here. So actually, just chill for 1 second. Netflix and chill. This is about trust. You got to trust us. All right, so I'm gonna have you, Svenja, give me your arm. Yeah, so I'm gonna record now from the output of your motor cortex, which is right here. There's a neuron in the Bet cell, largest cells of the neocortex, is going to cross over, synapse on your spinal cord, and come out to your arm. And so what we're able to do is do a biohack. As it hits the arm, it causes neurons to fire in your muscle fibers, and we're going to be able to amplify that and be able to listen to what your brain sounds like as amplified through the muscle fibers, okay? So you just give me a second here, and I'm going to plug you in, and we're going to listen to your brain. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So when you're ready, just squeeze your hand. Okay, really hard. Doesn't that sound beautiful? Okay, so this is so now, but we are clever scientists. We want to move on and do something cool with that, right? And we'll get to you in a second. All right. So first thing we want to do is we're going to take our technology and put it into an Arduino. It's a microcontroller. And so we can actually do interesting stuff with that. So if you squeeze your hand, the first thing we're going to do is make a simple brain-machine interface. So as you squeeze it, you're causing a row of lights to turn on. So your brain is controlling lights. Ooh. All right. Not that interesting, but let's make it more interesting. So this is Germany. Let's do something more appropriate. So we're going to make techno music. So you're now going to control this 8-bit synth. So when you're ready, I want you to go ahead and give it a pump. All right, that's cool. All right, that's a very, very important thing here. All right, that's cool. All right, so now, so even more important than that is maybe we could do something and make a brain-machine interface. So hold this with your other hand. And so I'm going to plug in a battery here, and we're going to have your brain control not only your hand and your left hand, but also this robotic hand on the other side. So when you're ready, I want you to squeeze your hand. So this is now a brain-machine interface done in a very simple way that even a student would be able to sort of grasp the idea of, so roll really hard. Okay, and then relax it. Okay, so that even a student would understand how this technology can be used and actually start to use this in the real world. All right, so now my friend Alex, come on over here. I need you. We're going to do one last experiment, which is fun, and it's about trust. All right, so what we're going to do now is we know now that when we record from your brain, we're recording from here as it synapses here, it comes out to your arm as you move your arm here. Okay. So when you bring your hand out and you,
Which one?
Yeah, we can do this one, this is fine. So as you move your hand like this, you have neurons here that are synapsing on your spinal cord and coming out here, just like you are. So when both hands are moving, both brains are kind of doing similar things. And so what would happen now is that we know that we can record from the output of your brain, because we saw it controlling the hand. What happens if we took that EMG, the electromyogram, and I injected it into your arm, where it would have come from your brain already, you would have passed your free will over to you, and your brain would be controlling both your arm, and you've lost your agency is gone. Okay, so all right, so we'll do an experiment and see if that works. So I'm going to do another biohack here, which is I'm going to stick electrodes on your ulnar nerve, which is your funny bone. If you ever hit your funny bone before, and what's going to happen is we're going to take a little amplifier here, and I'm going to amplify your electromyogram and have it trigger your muscles here. So in your ulnar nerve runs up here. It's really close to the bone, so it's easy to stimulate. So I'm just going to push an electrode here and here. And then I'm going to hold this here. And now when I plug you two together, you guys will become one cybernetic organism. And there is, okay, so you guys are now one. I'm gonna turn, so I want you to kind of look away. So you're going to look away. Just relax that hand. And whenever you want to, you can just slowly start, you can just give it a few pumps. You want to get up to that, all right, there you go. But not too much, okay? Just chill. All right, so we'll do it again. I'm going to turn up a little bit more. Okay, you feel that, okay. All right, so I'm so you're starting to see something here. Okay, this is called threshold. All right, so this is so I'm gonna turn up just a little bit more. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
So when you want to, go ahead and. All right, so now, so you have lost the free will of this hand. So go ahead and do it again. So know what would happen now. So your brain is firing action potentials, hitting down your spinal cord, coming out to your arm. We're picking it up and sticking in where your brain would come out there. So what would happen now if you just relax your hand, like let it fall to the ground, like you have What would happen now if I took my free will away from you? Could we move his hand, do you think? What do you guys think? Yes, okay. Anyone say no? Okay, all right, one. Thank you. All right, so we're going to do an experiment now. So just you keep it relaxed. I'm going to move her hand as much as I want, and nothing's happened. Why not? Her brain isn't engaged. Right, so go ahead and squeeze it really quick. All right, make sure it still works. All right, every experiment needs a control. All right, so let's turn that off. Let's have a round of applause for our volunteers here, especially you, Alex. You guys can keep those.
I can keep those?
You can keep those, yeah. Perfect.
Thanks.
All right, and I'm just going to just summarize by telling you that this is something that we started a number of years ago, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. We already have, middle school kids that are winning science fair awards and doing new experiments that are kind of pushing the boundaries of science. And just last week, I was at the Society for Neuroscience, the largest neuroscience conference again, and a young student who is a graduate student in a research lab is presenting his first poster and stopped by to let us know that it was because of this organization in our Spiker box that he did in high school that encouraged him to become a neuroscientist. So I ask you here in Germany to tell your friends and family and colleagues that are in the education business that you saw something very cool at TEDxFrankfurt and that you should be pushing neuroscience into the early education as well. So thank you so much.